Welcome into Giants Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and sometimes people just get it. And I think San Francisco Giants manager Tony Vitello, he just gets it. I'll explain what that means and more as we get into the latest edition of the Giants Access podcast and get into the Giants free agency roundup, including a new outfield free agent target, which closer, elite closer, I may add, are the Giants showing interest in? And we answer the question, who is the Giants' new pitching coach? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let's dive into today's episode of the Giants Access Podcast, starting off with manager Tony Vitello. Now, I get it. The last episode, I questioned what baseball looks like under Tony Vitello. Would it be aggressive, hard base running, or would it be kind of lackadaisical, let these guys play and do their thing? We're going to table that because we're not going to know what it's going to be for the next, 5 months or so until spring training comes around and the actual regular season begins in March and April of next year. But I do think almost every time you hear something regarding Vitello, well, yes, it is maybe along the lines of relationship centered. It's really hard not to like every time you hear something about the Giants' new manager because we have reports yesterday, that being Tuesday, November 18th, or at least Monday, the 17th of November, that Giants manager Tony Vitello and bench coach Jace Tingler are going to travel the globe and to the Dominican Republic in order to understand Dominican culture and work on their Spanish speaking ability. And that to me just oozes someone that understands. They're not coming into the new job thinking, oh, I'm going to be, slide right in and do the exact same thing I did at college. He knows I can't do that. Where, no offense to Tennessee, most of those guys are English-speaking white men, which is never a bad thing. We love some white men. But the MLB is different. And San Francisco has been trying to embrace the cultures of the world, whether it's Elliot Ramos in Puerto Rico or Rafael Devers, Willie Adames, albeit he speaks English, Luis Matos, and younger guys in the farm system. If you want that guy to be your manager for a decade, which I would assume Buster Posey really wants him to be the manager for the next 10 plus years, if it all works out right, you have to be able to communicate with guys already on your roster that don't really understand or speak English, or at least have a different culture than that of Tony Vitello. It also helps in luring free agents in. You can look at the entire MLB. A lot of it is international players that, maybe do speak some English, but their culture is entirely different than that of being the American culture. And I love that Vitello and even Jace Tingler, who has been a manager with the Padres, and I think the bench coach for the Rangers a couple years ago, I do think that, you're seeing them not be complacent, right? Sometimes you have guys come into a new job and think, whatever I did in my previous job or place of business translates to here. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's also not. And I love the desire to adapt and learn and grow. Everybody, no matter what the aspect of life it is, relationship wise, your working relationships, your job itself, your brain, your mind, you should always be wanting to grow. And I love that Vitello is doing that, wanting to understand maybe where guys come from, how to talk to them, how to speak to them. And, we discussed in the last episode of you really have to have the relationship, the relationship side down if you want to connect with younger guys on the roster. I don't think Gabe Kapler could do that. I don't think older managers like Bob Melvin can do that when you have young guys like Matos. Even Jung Hoo Lee, albeit he isn't from the DR, guys that, just aren't white dudes in America and from the South and Tennessee. That's not what those guys are. They can't relate to you. They don't understand you very well, or at least get where you're coming from. And I love that Vitello is trying to bridge that gap to get to guys like that to hopefully avoid those big dry spans during the year. And if they're struggling throughout the season with younger guys like Matos, Ramos, and other guys like that, he can actually have conversations with them 1v1, understand their plights, where they're coming from, and hopefully help them grow in, year 3 and 4 and 5 for these young dudes, and maybe help them break through from, the kind of in the middle, barren wasteland of kind of the 4A type player into being an actual MLB caliber talent on the roster. It's a small thing, but I think when Vitello, and I don't want to underplay it because it's really important. We talked about, oh, everything is relationship stuff, how to communicate. That stuff really matters in locker rooms, in clubhouses. And you hear a lot of stories of managers coming into a place and just things don't connect. One of the worst examples is Tony La Russa, who is like 80 years old, coaching the White Sox with guys like Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert and Tim Anderson. He didn't know what the heck he was doing out there in Chicago. It was a big mistake. And Vitello, who is not 75, 80 years old coming into his first managerial job, there is a desire to want to discuss with the young guys. And I think it goes hand in hand with what Buster Posey said of, if we want to take that next step, if we want to become a really good team for a long time, how we do that is having young guys like Matos, Ramos, guys stuck in between finally break through. And although that has to be proven on the baseball diamond, a lot of that may come from just being able to communicate with them, talk to them, have a conversation with them, and kind of get down to their level, right? I hate to use the analogy of children, but you don't talk to a 5-year-old or a 12-year-old like they're 26, 35, or 40. They need you to get down on their level and hopefully, kind of relate to them. The same thing goes for young people too, right? I'm 28. I'll be 29 in 11 days. When I was 18 playing high school baseball, I was in college playing baseball. I didn't want this 45-year-old man talking to me like I'm, like they're 18, like it's cringy. Like, you don't want that. You want to be an adult, yes, but there are ways to communicate that while trying to relate. Like, you don't want Vitello walking into the clubhouse being like 6'7". You don't want that, but you want him to be able to communicate to younger guys. And I think just breaking that language barrier, or at least trying to break that cultural barrier, goes a long way into helping young guys grow and make them feel more comfortable, make them feel more wanted. I don't like to use the analogy or kind of get more into the video game side of things, but a couple of years ago, and they don't do it now, but MLB The Show would, when you're targeting guys from different countries like Puerto Rico, albeit that's in America, but you get my point here, Puerto Rico and the DR and Venezuela and Mexico, you would get bonus points for having a compatriot on your team because it makes them feel comfortable. Now, that's a video game. This is real life. But being able to talk to your manager, talk to your boss, like, nobody likes a workplace of, I can't speak to the guy above me because he doesn't get me, or I don't get him, or they don't even want to understand where I'm coming from. Vitello is hoping to bridge that gap. I think it's a great thing for the Giants. And I think it's a great job by him and Jace Tingler saying, hey, we need young guys to grow, to take that next step, to build around our core of Chapman and Webb and Devers and Adames. And just having a simple conversation can hopefully go a long way into that. That said, I want to get to the newest Giants hire of the offseason, and they've replaced pitching coach JP Martinez, who left, I believe, for the Braves a couple of weeks ago. They have now hired Justin Message as their new pitching coach in 2026. It is spelled Meccage, but it is Message. I'm saying it right. It's not Machaj or Machage. It is Message. But the question is, who is this man? Because last year, the Giants were awesome when it came to their pitching staff. They didn't have all the arms. They didn't have dominant pieces. It was Logan Webb and Robbie Ray and Verlander, who was great for the last 2 months of the year, but really wasn't great throughout the season. You had younger guys like Birdsong and Rupp and Whisenhunt, but their bullpen was really strong finding pieces. Peguero down the season. You had Rogers for a period of time. You had Miller and Rodriguez pre-injury. They just found ways to make things work. And I think we all saw that Martinez was doing a great job with the pen. They had one of the best bullpens in baseball last season. I think had they not kind of torn things down, that probably would have persisted throughout the rest of the year, but they didn't for all the right reasons. That said, Message spent last year as the Milwaukee Brewers AAA pitching coach. And I think the track record with the Brewers is clearly a standout. Milwaukee always finds a way to find pitchers that maybe single A guys that are starters, turn them into bullpen studs, or to get the best out of the pitchers they have in the building, despite maybe not paying the most for guys, or their willingness to trade guys who are like Freddie Peralta, might be traded this offseason, or Corbin Burns, and turning those guys into something else. And, being able to kind of cut cost with pitching because they can find success with no matter who's in that room, albeit Message hasn't been there for a very long time. I do think that his one season in Milwaukee was a big deal for them. Going into the Milwaukee AAA pitching staff stats, they returned 13th in strikeouts. They had the second lowest walks, the second lowest hit by pitches, the third lowest ERA at 3.91, the fifth most wins. They had 16 shutouts last season. That was first in the International AAA League in which Message coached. They were third in saves at 39, and in the sixth most innings pitched. That's a damn good, track record there for one season. Again, it's 1 year, but that's a really good example of bring that to San Francisco. This team needs young guys to step up. Blake Tidwell, Will Bednar, maybe at some point Reggie Crawford. I don't know if he'll ever be a major leaguer, but still he's in there. Layden Rupp, Birdsong has to figure things out. Wisenhunt, Trevor McDonald, guys like that of can you figure this out for us? Message has shown a track record to be able to not only one, find the best of that AAA staff, but two, these are young guys pitching really well. And a lot of the guys there were up in the big leagues by the end of the season. So I think it's a big get for the Giants. I'm not going to say it's an amazing get because things have to be proven, but for his 1 year as a AAA pitching coach, really good stuff. He also spent time with the Pirates as an assistant pitching coach in 2018, and then was their bullpen coach in 2020, all the way to 2024. So he has some big league experience, albeit it's the Pirates, and nothing really ever works out in Pittsburgh, so I don't want to hold that against him. You can also say, well, we got fired in Pittsburgh, so what's the deal there? It's the Pirates. I don't want to make too much of that. I don't want to compare the Pirates to the Browns in the NFL, but there does seem to be some consistencies or comparable traits with them. That said, this also isn't a big get where it's in 1 year you couldn't say goodbye, or in 1 year maybe other coaches see that Vitello translates really well to the Major League Baseball level, and then say, hey, we want to go over there instead. I can see that being the case. Or it works out and we're all sitting back wow, we have the Milwaukee Brewers now in San Francisco in regards to pitching, which would be a great get for a team that doesn't seem to want to pay for big name starting pitchers for 10 plus years and, $200, $300 million contracts post age of 30. How do you offset that? You find young guys that continue turnarounds throughout the organization in AAA, AA, into the MLB level. So it's an interesting get. I think it's a good hire. And I think it does scream Greg Johnson and the ownership saying, hey, Posey, you're not spending big on free agents in regards to pitching, guys that are 30 years old. But if we can kind of turn this around and kind of rebuild our farm system, which still has a long way to go, but if we have this kind of pitching staff in place that can get the best out of guys in that room, it goes a long way to help not having to buy, big name free agents, or you have Webb and maybe you find somebody else in that room, or whatever, whether it's Ray or you pay for Imai from Japan, but you don't have to pay big if you can already find guys in that room and trade away guys, say like Ray, at the end of their contracts this year at the deadline, and you can turn it into two guys or so. That's all me spitballing here and kind of talking hypothetically, but that's kind of the truth of hey, if you turn into the Milwaukee Brewers, that's the best case scenario. They never pay starting pitchers, which is funny because Brandon Woodruff signed a $22 million per year qualifying offer with them, which didn't make sense, but still, they do this every single year and somehow are still competitive. So, they were in the NLCS last year. It didn't turn out well, but a lot of that was because of their young starting pitching, whether it's Quinn Priester or Mizorowski, or now Peralta being there and Woodruff coming back off injury. The Brewers are always they are the epitome, they are the standard of how do you turn around pitching staffs consistently and still be good. If the Giants can find that, they'll be in a really good spot with the core they have on offense. That brings us to the Rule 5 draft conversation because San Francisco protected absolutely nobody in the Rule 5 draft this year, which really isn't a surprise necessarily. They had no open roster spots on their 40-man roster. And the way Posey has talked, they are banking on young guys taking big steps in 2026, thus not wanting to cut those guys or DFA those guys going into free agency. However, that also means there are guys like Will Bednar, a former first-round draft pick of the organization that is open to be snagged by somebody else in the Rule 5 draft. And I thought the conversation, the discussion online has really shifted into, Jesus, how bad are the Giants at drafting in the first round? And I brought up here on the YouTube screen and on the podcasting platforms for you, the Giants' first-round draft picks in previous years have not been good. And I'll zoom in here for you, hopefully, on the screen so you can see it. But let's go last year. Gavin Kylan, it's last year's pick. We'll see how it works. But you go all the way down, maybe until 2008, 2009. You have Buster Posey in 2008, obviously future Hall of Famer, one of the greatest catchers of all time. In 2009, you have Zach Wheeler, first-round draft pick, trade him away for Carlos Beltran 2 years later. That didn't work out for you. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball with the Mets and the Phillies ever since. Hopefully he can get back healthy for Philadelphia because he's just a treat to watch pitch every 5 days. That said, you got nothing essentially from Zach Wheeler outside of a half season of Carlos Beltran, which didn't work out for you. The other remaining first-round draft picks have just quite frankly been either dog shit or have never played for you at the MLB level. And that's really sad for when you try to compare the Giants of how close they could be to the Dodgers, the Padres, maybe teams like the Cubs, teams like, the Mets, the Braves, guys that have, or teams that have really surrounded their kind of free agent pickups with a really good core, right? Nico Horner, Ian Happ, you can go on and on. PCL, he was a trade with the Mets. Like, they have a nice core in Chicago. Now, they aren't a great team, but they're a good team because of their draft picks or the trades they made to get young draft picks in place. Whereas San Francisco has not made great trades to acquire draft picks, which goes back to Zaidi's tenure and Sabian's tenure, albeit that was, the dynasty era of San Francisco. There's been big misses by Zaidi and Bobby Evans to not trade away guys at the deadline when they should have to hopefully recoup some picks. But a lot of it goes down into how bad they drafted. You want to know why San Francisco has not been able to find a superstar? It ain't because they can't bring in free agents. Yeah, that sucks, and that's changing, thankfully, to Posey and Willie Adames, but it's because they've drafted so poorly. Think of how good the Dodgers have been for a decade plus. Cody Bellinger, Cody Seager. You can go on and on and on. Those are the big ones, right? The pitching staff, which was just as like 30 guys deep, ready to kind of be guys at the MLB level, because they draft really well in the first couple of rounds. You have guys like in 2010, Gary freaking Brown, who played 7 games with San Francisco. Speedster, couldn't hit, couldn't play defense, was terrible. You have Kyle Crick, who was traded away for Andrew McCutchen when they tried to go forward again when it was McCutchen and Longoria, and it was like, oh my God, what are we doing? Then it was Joe Panik, who right now is their most valuable first-round draft pick since 2011. That's right. Joe Panik, who lasted 5-ish seasons in San Francisco, was a phenomenal defensive player, won a World Series, was a big part of them winning a World Series, but fell off a cliff after like 5 years. We love Joe Panik here on the show. Just saying, that's not something you would like to say. Joe Panik, right here in 2011, is your most valuable first-round pick in a decade plus, almost a decade and a half. That's terrible. Then you have 2012, Chris Stratton, who he wasn't terrible, had a long career, but really ain't been a guy for you. Christian Arroyo, yikes. That got you Evan Longoria. That's another guy you traded away. Like San Francisco, since 2009, with Zach Wheeler, has traded away Zach Wheeler, Kyle Crick, I think Chris Stratton, but certainly Christian Arroyo. They've traded away Phil Bickford. They traded away Joey Bart. They've traded away 6 with James Tibbs 2 years ago. They traded away 6, if not 7, first-round draft picks for practically nothing, albeit Tibbs got you Devers. That's kind of the big one. And then Beltran and Wheeler, because Wheeler hadn't pitched yet, in the bigs, but still, they've really had a hard time drafting. They have like the next great one or good one, really, since Joe Panic has been Patrick Bailey, who I love Patrick Bailey. Great defensive catcher. Once the ABS system comes into place, I don't know how valuable he is. Now, if he can hit 240 with 12 home runs, that's a great catcher. We'll do it all day. But that has to be proven this year. Because if not, they already talked about, they discussed trading him before. Maybe they'll think about it again at the deadline, knowing Sean Murphy could be a Giant by the end of the year. I'm just saying. That said, then there is Elliot Ramos, who I love Elliot Ramos. The defense was atrocious last year. It's like you hope he can be a guy. It was an all-star 2 years ago. The bat still works, but the defense has to improve, and the bat has to be more consistent. But Joe Panic cannot be your best first-round pick in 15 years and 14 years. Now, Bryce Eldridge might come up and play the entire season. That could change. But Will Bednar, not on the 40-man roster 4 years into his Giants career. Not good. Reggie Crawford, same thing. Hunter Bishop got released this offseason. Joey Bart on the Pirates. Bickford traded for Will Smith when he was in Milwaukee. Chris Shaw, I don't know where the heck he's at. Beatty was terrible, was a Pirate and a Cleveland Guardian. He stinks. Arroyo traded. Stratton was a Pirate and a Cardinal a couple years ago. Crick was traded. Gary Brown, he fell off the face of the earth. The Giants have hit on what looks like to be, if Bryce Eldridge pans out, 1 first-round draft pick. If Bailey pans out, maybe 2 first-round draft picks. If Ramos pans out, 3 first-round draft picks since 2012. And that's not including Gavin Kylan from last year's first-round pick. Like, Tibbs is gone. Crawford could be gone. Bednar could be gone. Bishop is gone. Bart is gone. Bickford's gone. Shaw's gone. Beat is gone. Arroyo's gone. Stratton. It's not a good track record. They've really, really struggled to find any consistency. Now, I'm hoping that changes with Posey. Hoping it changes with Vitello and Manasian with the front office now, but it's been a long, dry spell for San Francisco. Hopefully Eldridge breaks that. But the reason why I brought it up was because of how bad they've been at drafting first-round draft picks. It all comes back to Will Bednar. He is not a starter anymore. He's a reliever. I'm really shocked San Francisco didn't find a way to add him to the 40-man roster, but if you don't feel bad about losing him, or at least don't think somebody else would take him, also isn't a great sign, but I think his stuff plays. He's a reliever now, throwing 100-plus miles an hour. I would not be shocked if someone goes down, he's up by the end of the year, but it shows you where his current standings are of we can afford to lose Will Bednar, another first-round draft pick. That was a long spiel, but more of a sense of there needs to be urgency to hit on young guys, and you can't go 14 years without finding a legitimate first-round draft pick because it's been not great. Even if Eldridge hits, it's 12 years, 13 years of, oh my God, that's why you haven't been competitive, or a large part of why you haven't been competitive for, a decade going on now. It's not been good. It's not been good. Some small moves here. A minor league signing by San Francisco was Wilkin Ramos, a right-handed relief pitcher with an invitation in spring training. He had a 3.22 ERA in his minor league career with 322 strikeouts. So small arm, could be a piece, but a small signing nonetheless. And that brings us to our free agency roundup portion of today's show. I'm talking fast because there's so much to get into, and I want to bring you things quickly. That said, 4 players accepted the qualifying offer this offseason. 2 of them may have been targets by the San Francisco Giants. The first being Trent Grisham of the Yankees. I don't think San Francisco wanted him, but he goes back to New York. Might spell an end to Cody Bellinger, which could be interesting for San Francisco, but I'd also stay away knowing his home and road splits. Then there is Shota Imanaga, who had his option declined and then a qualifying offer extended. I wonder if the Cubs didn't want him to accept that, but did it anyways, knowing they could maybe got a first-round draft pick in exchange. So maybe kind of burn the Cubs there. I don't know. But the 2 guys I think San Francisco may have liked in free agency is second baseman Gleyber Torres. He returns to the Tigers. Then Brandon Woodruff returns to Milwaukee. 2 guys off the free agent market, making the starting pitching and second baseman market rather thin entering free agency. But the Giants are showing real interest in closer Devin Williams, per John Paul Morosi. Now, we talked about him, I think it was the last episode, of I get it. The stuff still plays. He may want a 2-year deal. Not going to be locked down for a long time. He can be an 8th inning guy, 9th inning guy. He can serve as whatever you need him to going forward. I think he'd be a great fit in San Francisco. He's a proven winner with Milwaukee. He'd fit in back into the Milwaukee kind of thing they're trying to do with the Giants and their pitching staff. That said, depending on the price, I've already talked about going after guys like Brad Keller, Emilio Pagan, and go getting Tyler Rogers and Ryan Helsley. Buy low on some dudes and kind of bank on the more the merrier than the one guy to help kind of prop you up. The Giants have reportedly been wanting to sign minor league free agents, kind of insulate themselves as the year goes on. I don't know if Devin Williams fits into that mold. Obviously, he's a MLB level closer, but it seems like they want more guys than just a select few. And I would go that route. I think they're going to be, you're going to hear this the entire offseason. San Francisco is a player for XYZ. That's been the case for the last 3 years or so. Aaron Judge, Arsene Judge, Shohei Ohtani, whoever else, right? Carlos Correa, and now the pitching too. It just seems like they may have interest, but again, what does that mean? Interest in regards to they've had a conversation or they've made an offer. Probably not making an offer right now, or at least the offers that are being made are more preliminary than anything. But I wouldn't make that deal. I'd love it, but from what they're saying, it doesn't add up to what they think they'll do. But that's out there. The Giants have interest, serious interest in the former Yankees and Brewers closer Devin Williams, per John Paul Morosi. We also have a trade to announce, not from the Giants, but one that maybe took an option off the market for them. That is the Angels trading away outfielder Taylor Ward to the Baltimore Orioles for starting pitcher Grayson Rodriguez. I don't know what the Orioles are doing. I get they want another bat. I understand that. Getting a veteran in the room certainly helps. O'Neill can now play DH. Ward goes to left field. You have Kierstead. You have other guys in that room that can hopefully, kind of grow into their playing careers and take the next step in their development. But they need pitching. And they traded away Grayson Rodriguez, who has had injuries. I don't know if he can stay healthy, but interesting move. I think may have taken at least one of San Francisco's targets off of the trade market, that being Ward. But the fact that Baltimore gave up Grayson Rodriguez is nuts. There's certainly some blowback there. I think you can see on social media, fans are like, what the hell's happening out there in Baltimore? I do think this may mean they're going to be in the market for a starting pitcher, which could also mean San Francisco has an adversary if they want to be in the big market playing for guys like Valdez, or maybe making a trade for Freddie Peralta. I think the Orioles are one to watch out for. They have a lot of high-end prospects. I think it'd be a good thing for them to part ways with some of those guys. And I think, if anything, this tells me the Angels are getting a young pitcher back and Baltimore's getting a bat, and they're probably going to trade some prospects away for a pitcher, which might be Freddie Peralta this offseason, which would suck for San Francisco because I want him in San Francisco. But watch out for that. That to me seems like not a guarantee, but one thing to watch out for. A team that needs pitching doesn't trade away pitching to not acquire pitching. So watch out for that as the year goes on. Also wouldn't be shocked to see Baltimore trade for Luis Severino. Just I'm wearing a Ricky Henderson A's hat because we are big Oakland A's fans here. They should have stayed in Oakland, but we are Giants fans through and through. But watch out for Luis Severino being traded. He hated playing in Sacramento. Who wouldn't? And he really wanted out. He got paid for relatively cheap. I could see Baltimore being a team for him. Or maybe San Francisco says, hey, you stay in the Bay Area in some aspects. Go from, Sacramento in the north, come down to, South Bay and be in San Francisco for a bit and, have some fun. I think he'd fit well in San Francisco, but I also think he'd be a good third or fourth starter for you. He wouldn't be an ace. He wouldn't be a 2, but a 3 or 4 guy wouldn't be a bad idea. Watch out for that as the offseason continues. But we have maybe my dog's over there scratching himself. Maybe another outfield target for San Francisco, where Taylor Ward goes off the market, one enters the market. Now, it's not going to be a big bat, not going to be a big glove, but we have heard throughout the offseason that San Francisco and Buster Posey and Zach Manasian and company are wanting to acquire another outfielder. Now, the thought is that that would be a veteran guy who maybe you hope can give you 25 plus home runs a year, hence why you're seeing connections to players like Cody Bellinger. And you're seeing guys like, albeit lesser options, like Harrison Bader. You're seeing some people out there saying, go in on Kyle Tucker. I don't think the latter will happen, but I do think Harrison Bader makes sense. But if they want to go cheap, which that may irritate some fans, but if you can buy some pitching, and a lot of it in bullpen and starting pitching staff members, maybe you can get a cheaper outfield option to help kind of give you some depth at the position. And when the A's make deals like this, you either say, wow, that player must be really bad, or the A's are really dumb, or in this case, maybe wanted to go with the youth movement as they continue to kind of make their progress into moving into Las Vegas in a few years and wanting to showcase some of their young guys in case a trade pops up down the road. That said, the A's have DFA'd outfielder JJ Bleday, meaning they can either trade him, San Francisco can wait for his release and maybe sign him during the year. I'd wait for that unless you want to trade guys away for Bleday, which I wouldn't do. I don't think many teams would, but Bleday is a valuable piece to have in a room. He's 28 years old, so still relatively young. He isn't 30 yet. He's a former number 4 overall draft pick of the Marlins. Hasn't truly panned out, but there have been some good things, I think, as a 4th or 5th outfielder. Maybe a veteran kind of platoon option. He wouldn't be a bad thing at all. The last 3 seasons with the A's, that being playing in the Coliseum and now in Sacramento, his slash line is a 244 average, a 313 OBP, and then a 410 slugging percentage. He's averaging roughly 15 home runs a year. He hit 20 in 2024 with 42 RBIs per season. Not crazy numbers, not going to blow you away by any means. No one's saying that, but for a cheaper option that I think maybe some teams may overlook, Bleday could make a lot of sense. He's a pull hitter from the left side, so he does give you that. I think he hits a lot of fly balls. 25% of his contacted hits this year were fly balls. That to me benefits or would benefit him playing in a short porch with McCovey Cove there. I'm not saying home runs, like none of that's going to happen, but I think just kind of being able to spray balls with triples alley and in McCovey Cove, kind of the high porch, get doubles, kind of rip singles off the cove and whatnot. Why wouldn't you try at least bringing him in for a year? It's not going to hurt you, or at least entertaining the idea of signing him. Not a great defensive player, doesn't have great range. He'll be a corner outfielder, but he does have center field experience. So maybe at some point, if somebody goes down or if you want to experiment with Jung-Hoo Lee playing right field, Bleday could make some sense. I wouldn't hate that, but he also has a plus arm, so I think right field makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to say it screams Mike Yastrzemski because you want better than that, but if I think Posey really valued a player like Yastrzemski. I think he valued his leadership. I think he valued his play. He was pretty consistent. Yaz was, I think, will always be a giant. I think fans liked Yaz a lot. He was the underdog story. Bleday wouldn't be that per se, but I do think that if you're looking for equal value or somebody that will give you a little less pop and a little bit less defense, Bleday can make some sense. Again, not going to be a big name, but sign a guy for 1 year, give him a spring training invite, or make him your fourth outfielder. He can play center, he can play right. The Giants, one big knock on them the last couple of years, nobody else could play center field besides Jung-Hoo Lee. Like, it was Tyler Fitzgerald's out there. It was Grant McCrae's out there. I love Grant McCrae, but like, what are we doing? Like, really? He's a defensive guy. I don't mind that, but you can see what they've done so far, right? Bleday's out there. You can go, sign him. Maybe he can be a corner outfielder guy, but also, maybe a center fielder if somebody goes down or whatnot. I also think you look at what they did earlier in the offseason by claiming the Dodgers center fielder Dustin Dean off of waivers. They're trying to find a backup center fielder, a guy that can give you a really good defense in case somebody else goes down. You saw last year, Daniel Johnson was up for a short period of time. I do think they want to find better defense. They have to have better defense, obviously, from Ramos and Matos, and those guys aren't playing great. Now, maybe Bleday becomes redundant with Drew Gilbert in the outfield, but I just think the more the merrier out there. You can never have too many arms, too many options. So I wouldn't mind making that deal. Would you be open to the idea of signing JJ Bleday to the outfield? And would you buy into the Giants maybe be able to get a little bit more out of him than the A's could last season out there in Sacramento? Are you all in on Devin Williams? What do you make of the Giants' piss-poor first-round draft picks? Do you think Bryce Eldridge can break that mold? Do you still believe in Patrick Bailey, Elliot Ramos? And tell me down below, do you love Tony Vitello going out to the DR, trying to learn some Spanish and ingraining himself in the Dominican Republic culture? I love that. Do you like it? Why wouldn't you like it? Tell me down below in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, until next time, see you later.